Everyone, to the point podcast. Everybody's doing well on this Wednesday. Today, the originally scheduled programming was I was going to be chatting with Harrison Schuttenbeld about the NBA offseason, free agency, different trades we've seen, switches around the NBA. He's had some last minute changes. He's actually heading to Montreal to watch the Rodgers Cup. So I don't begrudge him. I would love to be there myself. So he's on the move. He'll be back on at a later date. But today we're going to switch up the show a bit. It's just going to be myself, and I am going to talk some NBA, some big contract extensions over the last couple of weeks, what some teams are up to. I'm going to talk about the Rodgers Cup that he's going to. The men's and women's draw are starting to play themselves out here. Action last night where we saw Bianca Andresscu pick up her first win in over a calendar year. So it's been a minute for Bianca, and she was very emotional about her parents, very excited watching from above, and her dog Coco. We'll get into that. Rafael Nadal pulling out of the Rodgers Cup with a foot injury, and we'll dive into that. We got Daniil Medvedev moving on, a pretty decent draw for, after the Olympics. They cross the border. There's different restrictions. So I'm happy with the field. And so far the tennis has been strong, especially you get prime time, like the US Open that kicks off August 31st. You get those primetime matches, you get that feel. It's good. So I'm happy to see that coming into play, and the matches being really good so far on primetime. So that's always a bonus. Today, we'll also dive into a few NFL stories. Indianapolis Colts remain in the news. Some updates on Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson. So I'll give you guys that news. They also made some contract extensions to their management. So we'll dive into that. New Orleans wide receiver. He's got the all-time leading catches, 145 in one season. Michael Thomas is beefing, for lack of a better word, with the New Orleans Saints. So we'll dive into that drama. So, and talk about some other, we got NFL preseason week 1. Last week it was the Hall of Fame game between Steelers and Cowboys, but each team that plays in the Hall of Fame game gets a 5th preseason game. So this really kicks off preseason week 1, followed by 3 weeks. And then in less than a month, we have the real thing on September 9th, a couple weeks from tomorrow, where we'll see the Cowboys face the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And amongst other things, baseball and a few hockey stories as well. But, leading off today, the Rodgers Cup is something I really enjoy watching. Again, it's on once a year. Tennis really takes the spotlight for me during Wimbledon, during the majors. I like the Australian Open. It's in January. You're in NFL playoff action. That's only on Sundays. The NHL in January, it gets a bit, it gets a little tired. So does the NBA. So you're going through that kind of slog of games that mean something, but at the same time, it's not a push for the playoff yet. Then you have the summer action for tennis. But right now is really the push to the US Open, the push to the last major of the season. And, so far this year in the men's draw, it's been all about Novak Djokovic. On the women's side, it's been, wide open. World number 1, Ash Barty wins at Wimbledon. We've seen, a big upset at the French. So it hasn't been a dominant season from a women's tennis player, so to speak. Ash Barty's had a good year, but nothing like Novak Djokovic. So we head into this Rodgers Cup where Rafael Nadal has played one match since losing to the semifinal to Novak Djokovic at the French Open. That was last week, and he lost to world number 50 from Africa, Lloyd Harris. And Lloyd won his first match on Monday. He was scheduled to play Rafael Nadal tonight, but last night around 7:30, 8 o'clock, Nadal withdrew from the Rodgers Cup, or the National Bank Open. I'm going to call it the Rodgers Cup because that's what it's been known as forever, with a foot injury. And he didn't play Wimbledon. He didn't play the Olympics because of a nagging injury. And what this says to me is, yes, I believe he'll play the US Open. and this is likely precautionary, but he lost at the French. That never happens. Novak Djokovic will go down as likely the best tennis player ever, but Novak loses matches here and there. He lost to Sasha Zverev at the Olympics. Nadal doesn't lose on clay. He's lost 3 times all time at the French. And yes, Novak Djokovic is great, but he's dominated Novak there. And in the match, it was one of the greatest tennis matches I've ever seen. But as the match kept going and it progressed in length, Novak clearly is the most fit man on tour. But, Nadal plays such a physical style. He's very different. Novak's very graceful when he hits the tennis ball. It looks effortless. He doesn't even look like he's sweating. While Nadal is like the rest of us, he's sweating profusely. It's very hot. It's difficult for him. But it just seems like it's so much more effort for him to get his shots there. And I look at this and say, well, was it a fitness thing? Was it an injury? Or is it his body starting to wear down? At age 30, Nadal had a really hard time because he was getting a surgery every other year. And from 32 to 34, he will be 35 relatively soon. He's been healthy. He had a great stretch where Novak had a quiet few years. Federer's been injured. At one time, he won a French Open and U.S. Open back-to-back years. And he was on top of his game. He rises to 20 majors. But now you got Novak, who's right there. And you have Federer still hanging on. But Nadal seems to be leaning more towards the Federer route, where Federer gets to a certain age and his body just says, I can't do this anymore. In my opinion, Roger Federer shouldn't be playing tennis anymore. But and again, Novak's younger, but it seems to be these two warriors are starting to, deplete themselves. They don't have much left in the tank. And maybe it's not, and it's physical. Clearly, these guys still want to play. They still have the passion for the game of tennis. But I look at Nadal and say, a week after you get a week off, because he was out early in Washington. It was a week ago today, he loses to Lloyd Harris. And it's, he withdraws from the match. And I think it's not about the U.S. Open in a month. That's small potatoes, so to speak. That's the minor story. The bigger story is, how is Rafa going to look? How is Rafa going to feel in 6 months? In the Australian Open, when we get there just after Christmas, how's his foot? How's his body? Because, yeah, he'll have some downtime there, but we saw what Federer looked like at the French. He played a long 3rd round match that went 5 sets. He couldn't play his 4th round match. At Wimbledon, he was demolished I've never seen him beaten before. Just beat down. And although Nadal is still there, we are starting to see players take steps. I mentioned Sasha Zverev. He got to the U.S. Open final last year, loses to Dominic Thiem, yet this year he bounces back. He wins an Olympic gold medal. That's a confidence booster. And he beat Djokovic to win that Olympic gold medal. It's one thing to, Djokovic get kicked out of the U.S. Open last year because he hit a ball woman. That major has a small asterisk for me because Thiem never had to beat Nadal. He never had to beat Federer. He didn't have to beat Djokovic. If you didn't beat the big three to get there, there's no, okay, well, now he's the rising star. No. So we've seen this year, Thiem was out the first round of the French. He's been injured all season. So is Zverev that guy? Winning the gold medal is a big deal. Again, I've talked about this for 2 weeks. Winning gold is a big deal to me. It's winning the whole damn thing. So Zverev could potentially be that guy. We've seen Stefanos Tsitsipas. He had Djokovic beat at the French in the final. 2 sets up. But that 3rd set, he didn't have that killer instinct. He let it slip. Djokovic comes back, takes home the title. But he's there. And I saw good things from him last night where he played Hugo Humbert, really good French player. He lost the second set tiebreak. And I said, oh, this is just going to be demoralizing. He might lose this match because he hasn't played much tennis since Wimbledon. But to his credit, he dominated the third set, wins it 6-1, and he moves on. So maybe he can get some momentum in this tournament and get to a potential final, win the Rodgers Cup, get some momentum heading into the final major of the season. So I look at Stefanos Tsitsipas, I look at Sasha Zverev. Those are my two guys that can potentially rise into that discussion. Right now, there's nobody. Those two are, I'm picking hair. I'm trying to put more people in the discussion of men's tennis. Because whether people like watching men's more than women's, which I think that's most people, I watch tennis with my mother. She's a woman. She prefers to watch men's tennis. But the far more interesting when it comes to competition, when it comes to upsets, when it comes to who's going to win, it's women's tennis by a quarter mile. Because like I said, it's an unranked woman has won 3 out of the last 4 French Opens. Yelena Ostapenko won the French Open in 2017. She has not got back to a major quarterfinal since. She's dropped outside the top 80 in the world, but she won a major. That's a story. Simona Halep, since beating Serena Williams in 2019 at Wimbledon, has not reached the 4th round of a major. She's a really good player. But again, Petra Kvitova has not reached the semifinal since winning at Wimbledon in 2017. Really good player. But again, Carolina Pliskova has been ranked number 1 at times, has been inside the top 5 for majority of the last 2 seasons, has never won a major, losing in 2 finals, including to Ash Barty at Wimbledon. But I'm giving you examples of how men's majors, men's tennis might be better depending on, how you view it. But when it comes to intrigue, the more intriguing thing, like I'm saying, I'm leading the show today with, is Nadal going to be able to come back? That's the storyline, because nobody else has been able to dethrone Nadal or Djokovic. Federer's done. He's not in that discussion anymore. There's a big 2 in tennis. Andy Murray is gone. Federer is gone. So you have these 2 guys. Daniil Medvedev potentially could get in that discussion. I mentioned Tsitsipas, Shapovalov. Not just being a Canadian homer, he got to the semifinal at Wimbledon. He's got all the talent in the world. He's got it all. He's playing tonight, primetime, at the Rodgers Cup. I think this is a big opportunity for him. There's no Nadal. You have Medvedev, who got into the 3rd round yesterday in a 3-set win over Alexander Bublik of Kazakhstan. Tsitsipas won in 3 sets. But Shapovalov beat these others, beat the next gen, so to speak. There's no Djokovic at this event. There's no Nadal. So can he prove that outside of these 2, I'm the best in the world? Can you establish that routinely? And I think that's something that we're waiting to see. Because for me, Medvedev had a great season last year. He hasn't had as good of a season this year. He had a good run at the U.S. Open. He's played really well at majors. This year, his majors haven't been as spectacular. His hard court season thus far has been mediocre at best. And he's ranked number 1 at this tournament. Now the clear favorite now that Nadal is out. But where does that go for him? Where does men's tennis go in the next number of years? Who's going to grab that mantle? I mentioned the women's game. Just looking today, these are 2 live scores. You have Arnia Sabalenka, who's number 1 ranked player at the Rodgers Cup in the women's draw. She's in the third set with Sloane Stephens, who's just trying to revive her career. And then you have Carolina Pliskova, who I just mentioned, she is down a set already to Donna Vekic of Slovakia. So it's fluent. It's so fluent in women's tennis. A journeywoman, a Canadian women's tennis player, Rebecca Marino, who's had surgery, who had to go through a real serious medical issue. It looked like she might never play tennis again. She played night one, primetime, cruised to a victory, played the first match on center today in Montreal, and she loses the first set 6-1 against Paula Badoza, comes back, wins, gets the next two sets 7-5, 6-4. She's playing tomorrow. So it's really interesting. And also on the women's draw, I mentioned Bianca Andresscu. And last night, it was encouraging and discouraging at the same time for me. And here's why. Obviously, the encouragement's very open. It's very transparent. She won the match. It's been very hard for her to win matches in the past 18 to 20 months. And a win's a win, no matter how you get it. And I don't care if it's a walkover. If you advance, it's a confidence booster. You're moving forward while your opponent is not. But last night should have been a routine win. She's playing Harriet Dart of Great Britain. Dart played close over 2-hour match the night before against Leila Fernandez, also of Canada. Dart is not a great player. She's not a great serve. She's not a great returner. She's very basic. She's not a great tennis player, just point blank. But yet Bianca dominated the first set 6-1. I said, okay, this is going to be a 45-minute match. If this was Bianca of the U.S. Open, if this was Bianca of Indian Wells, if this was 2019 at the Rodgers Cup, it's over. Check, please. But she likes to let her opponents back in the match. Up a break in the second set, Dart gets a break back and then breaks again and takes the second set. And the third set, it was a war, 6-4. She gets through it. But she has to fire the crowd up the whole time. And she's trying to get momentum. And it was almost desperate to me. It was like, please cheer me on because I'm so close to teetering off the cliff. And that desperation, that looking for encouragement can be a moot point if she keeps winning. This Rodgers Cup is very important, in my opinion, to her because she's out of sight, out of mind. Playing her first two majors of the year, she's out in the first round. That's Eugenie Bouchard territory. That's what she's been doing the past 3 to 4 years. And I look at Bianca, she's got way more talent than Eugenie ever did. Her serve, her return of serve, she reminds me a ton of Serena Williams because she has the power. She has the serve. She has that ability to fire herself up and take over matches just by overpowering other women. However, fitness has to come into question because to me, she's never looked the most fit. And we've seen women do really well. I was talking with this player the other day, Ons Jabber. She's a woman from Switzerland, and she's kind of a bigger lady, but she can play. And if she wins tonight, second match primetime, she'll play Bianca tomorrow, likely primetime at the Rodgers Cup. But she can make it work. But she's been the most consistent player on tour. She got the second most wins on tour this season for women behind Arina Sabalenka, the world number 3. So I just look at Bianca and say, yes, last night's win was a good little story. That's all I can give it because you beat a player you should have beaten. The U.S. men's basketball team doesn't get a whole lot of credit for winning the gold medal because they should have won the gold medal. You have Kevin Durant. And that team, even though it's their B or C team, is still better than any other team. They have more, every player on that team is in the NBA. You can't say that for Argentina. You can't say that for France. You can't say that for Slovenia, Australia, what have you. Bianca is a major champion. Dart has never been to a third round. That tells you what comparing, contrasting these two women. And we do this with Canadians, and I think we did it a lot during the Olympics. I hear it all the time. Well, he did really well. He wasn't even supposed to medal. Like, why wasn't he supposed? Who said he wasn't supposed to medal? Why are we expecting our players? And I don't root for Bianca because I don't root for him. I'm just saying, as a Canadian, why are we saying, well, this is the bar for this player, and well, if they get an inch off the bar, that's spectacular. In sports, people that put limits on their goals, on their expectations, on their career have mediocre careers. Because when you get to a certain work ethic, when you get in a certain shape, you just, okay, I know what I have to do to get to where this is, and I'll have this type season. That's Phil Kessel territory. Phil Kessel knows he can eat hot dogs, knows that he can golf all summer, and really not work out and still play all 82 and score 25 goals. And is that a good season? Yep. But Phil Kessel, with work ethic, with more care, could be a 100-point player. I think if he really cared more, he could have been a number one option in Toronto and in Boston. And he was in both cities, but he was for the wrong reasons because they had nobody else to play. It's like putting Phaneuf on the back end, your number one defenseman. It just doesn't work. And for Bianca, with training, nutrition, with just less Purina dog chow commercials, more get your ass on the tennis court. Because you hear Chrissy, it's not just me. I hear Chrissy Everett. I hear Chris Fowler, John McEnroe, tennis experts that want to brag this woman up. At majors here, Bianca, she can do this. And I agree. She totally can. But where is that consistent work ethic where it's not just, well, she's a real, she makes the fourth round at this major, and that's a good little story. And it happens every once in a while. To me, with Bianca's talent, I thought she had the drive, but with her ability and the way her game is shaping up, it shouldn't be, well, we made the fourth round, we're really excited about this. It should be, I could be Serena-esque, because I don't believe anyone will touch Serena Williams for a very long time, and that includes Bianca. But could she win 5 to 10 majors? Why not? Just because no man or woman has won one in forever, men ever, doesn't mean that people can't. It's because men in the past have not. Doesn't mean Denis Shapovalov or Felix Auger-Aliassime cannot. Just because we have failures in certain players, just because Milos Raonic and Eugenie Bouchard, the heir apparent, because the media props up tennis players because there's only so many Canadians, so they're gonna get the majority of the attention. Just because they didn't work out and they didn't win a major doesn't mean that these next gens can't win multiple. And I just look at Dennis, I look at Felix, and I think they care a little bit more than Bianca. Because you don't see the commercials. You don't see, yes, Dennis has flair to his game, but it's about playing tennis. He gets pissed off. He gets like John McEnroe. John McEnroe wasn't about, he created a brand through osmosis, a personal brand, but that was his own doing just by being himself, by caring that much. And we're not seeing that from Bianca. Maybe my trepidation about her needing to pump up the crowd and needing all that support in Montreal last night will be a good thing, because she can say, this is me really caring. I'm trying to get people fired up here in Canada because I'm back. And that can be the narrative, because it's a weak tournament. We have round of 16 tomorrow, the third round. She'll play against Jabber or Castina. And if she wins that, quarters are Friday, semi-Saturday, final on Sunday. It's a quick week. And then you get the Western Southern Open next week, which I think she's going to play in. Then you get a week off, and then it's the U.S. Open. So it's quick here. Summer's winding down, the last major of the year, but this pumping up, this parade of compliments really only means a whole lot if you make a deep run. If she gets to a semifinal and it's a really hard-fought match, I can accept that. But it's fired up over winning against Harriet Dart and then bowing out tomorrow night, that's tough. Because to me, that's no progress. I'll let Sportsnet write that article and say of all the progress she made by winning one match here, they can write that. They write a lot of bad stories, and they love to do that. And surprisingly, the women aren't playing in Toronto because that would make a whole lot of sense coming from there. But we'll see. Today, looking around the men's side, Andrei Rublev, the number 4 ranked player in this field, advanced, beating Fabio Fognini 7-6, 6-3. Lloyd Harris, who beat Nadal last week, got a victory today, 6-2, 6-3 over Feliciano Lopez. Canadian Felix Auger-Aliassime was upset by Dusan Lajojevic of Serbia. So Felix loses in the first round at the Olympics. Now the first round here, he's having a really tough summer. And like Bianca, he's going through a tough stretch. Didn't play all that well. He played pretty good at Wimbledon, not as good as Shapovalov, but since Wimbledon, since having success, the play has dipped. And that's, again, it's tough. It seems like every time a Canadian makes some progress, they take 2 steps back by losing multiple matches in a row. Big John Isner advances. He'll play Rublev tomorrow. Yannick Sinner, who won last week in Washington, gets beat by James Duckworth. And tonight on primetime, like I said, Denis Shapovalov will take on the American Francis Tiafoe. That should be a good match. Tiafoe's a tough opponent. He's a gutsy player, so I don't think that'll be an easy match. And the second half of primetime will be the Frenchman, the always entertaining Gael Monfils, taking on Australian John Millman. And then on the women's side of the bracket today, we can pull this up here. We have Sloane Stephens now up a break over Sabalenka in the third set. So she looks like she might get through. We still to play today. We have Alina Svitolina, Coco Gauff, and tonight on primetime, Simona Halep will make a return to the court. She's been out for a long time, playing Danielle Collins of the States, and then Ons Jabber and Kazatkina will play, and the winner will battle Bianca Andresscu tomorrow in the round of 16. So good tournament so far. I think there's a lot of headlines. We'll see what Denis can do tonight after Felix goes out. You have 2 women into the round of 16 on the women's side, and then the men, Shapovalov will be looking to be the only one advancing tonight into the round of 16. The NFL is, it's getting going here. It's already, there's always stories. The main one all offseason long was about Aaron Rodgers and whether Aaron Rodgers was going to report to camp and whether he was going to be a Packer again. And that's kind of died down. He's in Green Bay. He's got his contract restructured. And, it sounds like it's business as usual. He's got Randall Cobb reacquired. And they're still they're still one of the best teams in the NFC. So he has a good chance at least, potentially competing for a Super Bowl this season. But really the team that's taken over the news cycle since training camp has begun is the Indianapolis Colts. And that started with a pair of injuries. The first being their newly acquired, hope to be franchise quarterback, Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz was traded from the Eagles and with the hopes that he was going to be the new franchise quarterback. Since Peyton Manning, they bottomed out. They got Andrew Luck. His first number of years, they didn't get an offensive line. He was battered, beaten. Some have a collapsed lung, multiple neck injuries. And just as the team got Quentin Nelson an All-Pro, got Ryan Kelly a Pro Bowler, got Mark Gronkowski, he decides to retire because his body just can't take it anymore. And, he decides to leave the game, and that kind of leaves the Colts in a tough spot. They go through Jacoby Brissett. They have a year of Phillip Rivers where he came over from after 16 years in LA. But Carson Wentz had an up and down career in Philadelphia. Drafted second overall where they traded up to take him. Rookie year, he was okay. They were 6-10. The next year, the team goes 14-2, but he's on his way to winning an MVP. But the week 14, he completely tears his ACL and MCL, out for the season. His replacement, Nick Foles, comes in and leads the Eagles to their first career Super Bowl win. And from then on, the relationship was not great. Doug Peterson, the head coach, seemed to favor Nick Foles. Wentz was put in a tough spot. Last season, you had Phillies, one of the most injured teams in the NBA. In the NFL, sorry. Their offensive line was not great. Their weapons were diminished, where Deshaun Jackson was injured, Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz. So it was very much a patchwork team. But week 14, he was replaced by second-round pick Jalen Hurts, and the rest is history. He's now an Indianapolis Colt. But he's reunited with Frank Reich, his offensive coordinator, during that almost MVP season where Tom Brady won it really by default. So we're thinking, okay, well, maybe Wentz can find the magic again. He's got good receiving core in Michael Pittman and T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle. And, you got Jonathan Taylor, who's an emerging running back out of Wisconsin, and Nyheim Hines. And they got a really, really stout defense where they have Darius Leonard, who might be the best middle linebacker in the NFL. You got Justin Houston in the pass rush. You got an offensive line, like I just mentioned, that's elite. But he injures his foot early in training camp, and they think, well, let's just wait and see. He's going to sit out a few days. Maybe it'll get better. But after a few days, after a weekend, the Colts release that Carson Wentz is going to have foot surgery. He is out 5 to 12 weeks, which is quite the period of time. 5 to 12. That's a very different timeline. And, basically what it told us is he's definitely out for the preseason, and he could potentially miss regular season time as well. So the immediate thought is, well, who's going to be the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts? And on the roster, they had Jacob Eason, second-year player, has 0 NFL snaps. Then they have Sam Ehlinger, 6th-round pick out of Texas, 0 NFL snaps. And they signed Brett Hundley, who's currently taking third-string scout team reps, who has 68 in his career, mixed between Green Bay and Seattle. So their quarterback room is very limited when it comes to experience, and beyond Carson Wentz, it gets very thin. So, the big thing is, well, Jake, they're not going to go acquire a veteran. Chris Ballard came out and said that. We like the guys we have in-house. Phillip Rivers is not an option. We're not going to trade for Marcus Mariota from the Las Vegas Raiders. Nick Foles is third-string quarterback in Chicago, but I don't think that was ever really an option because they weren't going to do that to Carson Wentz. They want Carson Wentz to be their franchise quarterback, and to have his replacement at one point in time come in would be a nightmare for him. But through all this, it looked like Eason was going to be the quarterback. And then yesterday, a story came out where Ehlinger is taking first-string reps. The rookie, 6th-round pick out of Texas. He might have the inside track. And Eason will start the preseason opener on Sunday, but it looks like it's an actual competition. Ehlinger had went 10 practices without throwing an interception. He was impressive. So it was now really like, okay, well, who's going to be the quarterback? Through all this, the aforementioned Quentin Nelson, one of the best guards in football, has the exact same injury as Carson Wentz. Now, this foot injury is not common, but both men have the same surgery within a day of one another and have the same 5 to 12 week timeline. So for Indianapolis, this is not good. No quarterback, no one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. That's a terrible start. And you have a quarterback battle with 2 guys who have not proven anything in the NFL. Yet today it was announced by Chris Mortensen, the great ESPN reporter, that it looks like Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson are going to be on track to start week 1 of the NFL season. And that is a huge development. The bigger one for me is Quentin Nelson, because I think he's more important to Carson Wentz's success, because Wentz needs time. He's coming off a couple of seasons where he did not play great football. Let's just be honest. He's had injury problems. He's not the most durable quarterback. And again, after a couple of bad years where interceptions were aplenty, he's a guy who will fumble the football. You need the offensive line to be stable. And you need that running attack with Jonathan Taylor to be lethal. And Quentin Nelson being there, helping in the run game, helping in pass protection, will only help Carson Wentz's career in Indianapolis. But also it puts to bed this, well, is it Jacob Eason? Is it Sam Ehlinger? Carson Wentz is the franchise quarterback. And it's another storyline that goes away. And for the Colts, that's a good sign. Again, you start the year, they have a really tough schedule to start the season. But you have Carson Wentz, you got Quentin Nelson, and even without preseason reps, which I doubt Carson Wentz would have started any preseason games anyway, you get your best players on the field to start the year. That's what you want. You don't want to be behind the 8 ball where guys are coming off injured reserve and they have to jump on a moving train. And that's what would have happened. Carson Wentz maybe would have came in week 2 or week 3, and then you get to start a game where the offense is used to Ehlinger, Eason, how they play the game. And then it's just not as easy of a transition. But, this isn't a guarantee that Carson Wentz, Quentin Nelson will play week 1. But I do think this report is encouraging to all Colts fans. It lets them know that they can at least hope that they'll have their 2 most important offensive players on the field week 1. And heading into week 1 without your 2 most important offensive players, where I believe they play the Los Angeles Rams week 1 with Aaron Donald jumping off the block. You want to have protection for your quarterback, and you want to have your offensive line just set in stone. Having bit pieces put into an offensive line can be really hard, because you need to know different schemes. You need to know how you're going to protect certain players, where you're moving off the snap. And, Quentin Nelson, I think, can jump on a moving train, but can the other guys figure that out? Can they figure, when he's back in, can they pencil themselves in the right position, where from now on you can just say, this is your position, this is your blocking scheme, let's go play some football. So that's a real positive story for the Colts. I mean, they have one of the more talented rosters in the NFL. On the back end, the receiving core is good, but there's still the question mark about Carson Wentz for me, and that'll be one of the more intriguing storylines all year, where Ryan Tannehill in that division in Miami looked like he was going to be a backup quarterback for the rest of his career. He went into Tennessee, where Marcus Mariota was inconsistent, but he was drafted 2nd overall out of Oregon, and Tennessee wanted him to be that starter, wanted to be the quarterback of the future. But after 4 or 5 games of that season, they go to Ryan Tannehill. And since then, Tannehill has not missed a start for Tennessee and is one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. And yeah, you could say, well, he's got Derrick Henry and he's got A.J. Brown. To me, he's still a top 10 quarterback. Ryan Tannehill is better than Matthew Stafford. Ryan Tannehill is better than Dak Prescott, because he does something that those guys don't do, and that's win. He's won playoff games. He got to an AFC championship game with a team that had no expectations of getting there, winning a road game in New England, winning a road game in Baltimore, ultimately losing to Kansas City, but a pretty impressive run. So can Wentz take that Tannehill model where you just get a new location, a fresh mind, where you're not that Eagles quarterback that couldn't meet expectations, that's battered, that's bruised, that's always being replaced, that's under Nick Foles' shadow, and just be Carson Wentz, have a fresh state of mind here. And yeah, there'll be a ton of pressure on you to deliver, but block that out. He doesn't seem to be a guy that reads a lot of headlines. Just play your game. I think Tannehill did that. He got out of Adam Gase's black cloud, because Adam Gase ruins quarterbacks. We saw that with Sam Darnold. He's going to try to do the same thing this year in Carolina, where for the Jets, he was the third overall pick. he never established himself. And he's hoping under Matt Rule and Joe Brady that he can show that he's a third overall pick, that he is a star, that he is a starting quarterback. The aforementioned Matthew Stafford, we're doing the same thing this year in Los Angeles, where forever he's in Detroit, which is the worst place you can be for an NFL player, because Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, who just got inducted to the Hall of Fame, quit. They ended their careers early because they were so sick of Detroit not doing anything to help them win. Matthew Stafford, to his credit, has been one of the toughest quarterbacks in the NFL throughout his career. And he's a fantasy magician, because guys who pick him in fantasy say, oh, he's such a good quarterback. But there's one thing fantasy doesn't account for. That's wins. And that's not something he's been good at. He hasn't won a playoff game. He's 32 years old. He's been in the league over a decade. So where do we go from here? There's a lot of guys looking at different locations and thinking, how's this going to turn out for me? It can only get better for Stafford, for Darnold, who are in two really tough situations. They're looking at new locations saying, well, let's give it a go. And we'll see what they make of it. But, good sign for Indianapolis. And also today, Jim Irsay, the owner, who he said he wanted to draft and develop players. He signed Darius Leonard last week, the middle linebacker. He signed Michael Pittman. He's kept Jack Doyle, re-signed T.Y. Hilton this offseason, who's been there forever. He signed general manager Chris Ballard and head coach Frank Reich to contract extensions through the 2026 season. So he's signing these guys long-term, clearly envisioning that these two are going to break through, going to win a Super Bowl, get back to that top of the mountain, where they got to an AFC championship game a few times with Andrew Luck, but never got to a Super Bowl. They won one Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. But again, only one. And that looking back, that's probably a failure, where you have a guy first overall. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, but he only won one Super Bowl. So clearly they want Carson Wentz. They look at this team and say, we are one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. I don't disagree. Chris Ballard has done a great job at building a roster. If they had drafted O-lineman and gotten O-lineman earlier, I'm not so sure Carson Wentz is here. I think Andrew Luck is still playing quarterback, where he doesn't have 1,000 injuries, and Andrew Luck's a better quarterback than Carson Wentz. So there's that, but he's built the offensive line now. He drafted a future Hall of Famer in Quentin Nelson. He's hired Frank Reich, who has been a great hire so far. Gets to the playoffs with Phillip Rivers, very close to upsetting the Buffalo Bills. Can they, they're in the AFC South. It's very winnable. Tennessee is a good team, but they've gotten worse on paper, if you ask me. They lose offensive linemen. They lost Jack Conklin to the Cleveland Browns, one of their best O-linemen. Their defense was bottom 5 in the NFL last year, so you got to hope that can only get better. But they lose some key veterans back there. They lost Corey Davis to the Jets, a great wide receiver. But they got to hope that, Julio, the addition of Julio, obviously Derrick Henry, can continue to pile drive through. But they lost Johnny Smith, their tight end, to New England. So for Indy, it's very winnable. The Jaguars, they finished dead last year. I think they won't finish dead last again, but Trevor Lawrence is a rookie quarterback. Urban Meyer's in his first year coach in the NFL. And then you have Houston Texans, who they are beyond a gong show, because you have the Deshaun Watson scenario still holding there. And I believe they will be the worst team in the NFL. So you got to think you're getting 2 wins for sure there. Those should be gimmies. But we'll see where this goes. But some interesting developments today in Indianapolis, where they might have their starting quarterback and they might have their starting offensive tackle on the field for week 1. In New Orleans, there's been another really interesting story, and that revolves around Michael Thomas. And week 1 last year, Michael Thomas suffered a knee injury. And it looked serious at the time. I thought he was going to have surgery right away. The team decided not to. He went through, had a cartilage cleanup, but the rest of the year he couldn't play. And it definitely hurt New Orleans. Drew Brees did not have his number 1 target. He went a lot to Alvin Kamara. Anquan Smith got a lot of targets. You had Jared Cook, the tight end, who became a focal point. But it definitely hurt the Saints offense to not have another key option. And heading into this season, you're thinking, well, Michael Thomas making $19 million a year. His last full season, he had the most catches in the history of the NFL for one calendar season. The guy's a stud, the nephew of Keyshawn Johnson, former Super Bowl champion with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he's got that pedigree in his veins to be a great receiver. Keyshawn going number 1 overall. So you think, well, this offseason he'll have surgery. And the team, so let's wait a bit. And then I believe that they wanted, the way Sean Payton has sounded is that they wanted him to have surgery pretty quickly into the offseason, likely March or April. That would have made him ready for training camp. But Michael Thomas delayed it, hoping that it would just get better. And he's kind of denied this, but I'll get into that in a minute. But he pushed it off, and he only had surgery in July, meaning he's going to miss the start of the season, potentially all of September, potentially all of October. And he could miss a large chunk of next season again, where the Saints don't have Drew Brees anymore. It's the Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston show, where Taysom, I don't believe, is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Just point blank. He's great at being the gadget guy. If you remember watching the Saints, he'll play special teams. He can line up at receiver. He will line up at running back. He'll line up at fullback and be that versatile Swiss Army knife and just be such a threat because he's such a big dude, really hard to bring down, and he's so valuable in that role. But he's not a great quarterback. He doesn't have a great arm. In limited action last year with Drew Brees hurt, he was not a great quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, who's now at Denver, was a better backup, was a better quarterback than Taysom Hill. Jameis Winston, last year was on the Saints roster, but did not get to start. Taysom Hill got starts over him. Jameis was coming off a season in Tampa where he threw for 5,000 yards, threw for 30 touchdowns, but also threw 30 interceptions, including 8 of them that were pick sixes, meaning they were taken back to the house by the defense. And playing under Bruce Arians, the risk it for the biscuit type system, clearly Jameis had the arm, but he also was careless, and he gave it to the opposing team too often. Being in that 30-30 club is not somewhere you want to be. And now, going into the season, no Drew Brees, they lose Jared Cook in free agency. They don't have Michael Thomas. So they have Adam Trotman, who is a tight end that's been on the roster for a while, but limited experience. He's been more of a blocking tight end. You got Anquan Smith, who's the most experienced of the receiving core. But then you have Marquise Callaway, who's bounced around, kind of been more of a special teams player. You still have Alvin Kamara, but it's just having Michael Thomas, having him on third down for any of these quarterbacks would have been huge. He led, when he had the most catches and for one NFL season, he led the NFL in third down receptions that ultimately led to a first down. This guy was as clutch as it gets. He got open. He's not a deep route guy, but you run to the sticks, he gets a yard past it, he's going to make the catch in tight coverage. But now, he released a cryptic tweet yesterday saying, they're only releasing their side of the story. They're just glad that I don't release mine. Kind of implying that, Sean Payton and the Saints organization, who've been complaining about Michael Thomas's decision to only have surgery in July, may be full of it. And I don't know where this story goes, but again, they have no cap room. They're stuck. Thomas making all this money in guarantees because he's got a guaranteed contract. And now the Saints are still in a quarterback battle. You have Taysom Hill versus Jameis Winston in this training camp. But whoever gets the start, how productive are they going to be? I mentioned the receiving core, where it's a lot of guys that are unknowns. And I think we'll see a lot of Deontay Harris, who is a special teams player that I know that Sean Payton loves. But again, he's still not a known commodity yet. And it's just a lot of, maybe. And that's a bad state to be, because Alvin Kamara can only get so many touches. And, you can only give him the ball so many times before the opposing defense says, okay, we're going to take away Alvin Kamara. You want to throw the wheel route? We're going to double cover him. You want to run the ball 25 times a game? We're loading the line of scrimmage. Okay, go ahead. And we're just going to eliminate him from the game. We're going to make it our mission to if you beat us throwing the ball, Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill, to Adam Trotman or Callaway or Deontay Harris, okay, we can accept that because we eliminated your best player. But more often than not, the Saints aren't going to beat opposing teams without Alvin Kamara having 100+ scrimmage yards at least and being the focal point of the offense. I don't know how good they're going to be anyway, because again, Drew Brees is gone. These two quarterbacks are unproven. Jameis Winston, he hopes to prove that he can be a starting quarterback after, going first overall and having a terrible time in Tampa Bay. But you look in their division, they have this defending Super Bowl champions who have the exact same roster they had last year. Tampa Bay is the favorite to repeat, and it's 100% valid. You still have Tom Brady. You have Mike Evans. You have Antonio Brown. You have Chris Godwin. You have Scotty Miller. You have Gronk, OJ Howard returning from surgery, Cameron Brate, a great offensive line. On the defense, you got Devin White, who might be one of the best players in the NFL. You re-signed Shaq Barrett. You kept Vita Vea. You kept Ndamukong Suh. They're loaded. So they're not going to beat – this year they're not beating the Bucs. Then Carolina. Who knows? How good is Sam Darnold? If he's the Jets' Sam Darnold, then I think the Saints can finish above them. But if he can play the way that people thought he could coming out of the draft, if he's got Robbie Anderson, if Christian McCaffrey can stay healthy, which is a big, knock on wood. With this team, they have a lot of potential. They have a lot of different players that can make an impact. So who knows there? And I look around and say, it's very much open. Atlanta. I don't think Atlanta would be great, but can Matt Ryan find one last year? They got Kyle Pitts, the tight end out of Florida. They've revamped their offensive line. They still have elite receivers in Calvin Ridley. So where does this team, if their defense can improve at all, I could see them finishing above the Saints in the standings, because Matt Ryan has at least won an MVP. He's been to a Super Bowl. These two guys haven't been to the postseason as a starting quarterback. So this Michael Thomas drama is going to have, I think, long-term effects on this team, because his presence, him not being on the field is so detrimental to this team's long-term success and their long-term future, because where do you go? After a certain point, you're going to say, who am I going to throw the ball to next? Can these guys even get open? And this is a team where, you can say free agency doesn't mean a whole lot. I think the Saints, watching the Saints in the preseason will be intriguing, because number one, who's going to start preseason games? Who's getting reps with those players? And I want to see the receivers. I want to see if they can get in and out of breaks. I want to see if they can gain separation. I want to see how these players, how the offense is run now with Sean Payton. Is it a lot of dump passes? Is he going to allow Jameis Winston to throw the ball down the field, take the top off the defense? So I think New Orleans will be an intriguing team to watch in the preseason, because there's just so much unknown about this team after they're so predictable for so many years, with Drew Brees in as one of the most stable quarterbacks in the history of football. So preseason games tomorrow, but I think the Saints, what they do, I'm going to look up their preseason game this week right now. I just think they will be a team to look out for. They will play Saturday. They're playing Baltimore on Saturday. So preseason opener for them is on Saturday. They will play the Baltimore Ravens. So we'll see what comes of that. But I do think they're an intriguing team in this preseason to see what they can do and where they decide to go. Major League Baseball. And you look last night and you say, well, there's some interesting games. You got every team from the NL West gets a win. Giants beat the Diamondbacks 8-7. Padres get by the Marlins. Dodgers beat the Phillies 5-0 after a pair of home runs. So, nothing changes. You still got Padres and Dodgers in the wild card. Giants continue to remain in first place in the NL West, but it's still the most intriguing division. But two huge storylines from the All-Star break. So that was around mid-July. From the All-Star break until now, the Boston Red Sox had a 4.5 game lead in the AL East at the trade deadline. At the All-Star break. The New York Mets had a 4-game lead at the All-Star break. Those teams are now respectively in second place in their divisions. You have the Philadelphia Phillies, who have soared. They swept the Mets last weekend. The Mets have been struggling, and I mean struggling in a big way. Pitching has gone down. They don't have Jacob deGrom. The bats have gone cold. And the team that looked like, well, finally the Mets are going to make the playoffs again, very much in doubt. And now they're in a dogfight in that division where the Phillies are in first, but the Braves, the tough Braves who lost Acuna Jr., who lost Marcell Ozuna, their left fielder, to domestic violence charges, are now a game out. Acuna Jr., one of the best players in baseball. They also lost the big Canadian, Mike Soroka, to another Achilles tear. But this team is they're a team that's a confident bunch. They were in the National League Championship Series last year. They don't want to go down without a fight. And then in the American League East, you have the Boston Red Sox, who were soaring all year. Yet Rafael Devers, who continues to be phenomenal at third and also with the bat. JD Martinez has a bounce-back season. Their bullpen's pretty solid. Matt Barnes is having one of his best seasons as a closer. But since the All-Star break, it has been a disaster for the Boston Red Sox, where the Tampa Bay Rays now have a 5-game lead over the Red Sox for first place in the AL East. It is that drastic for Boston, where they lose 3 out of 4 to the Blue Jays. They lost 2 or 3 to the Tigers. They lost a number of games to the White Sox last week. They've just been a world of hurt lately. And you look last night, they can try to get back in the division. You're playing the Tampa Bay Rays. You have a 4-1 lead. It's in the 7th inning, and Tampa, they don't have an elite player on their roster, but they just find ways to chip in. Manuel Margot gets a base hit. He gets on base, the former San Diego Padre. Then Brandon Lau, a second baseman type utility, can play the outfield, gets a double off the left field wall. So you have guys on second and third. And then Ji-Man Choi doubles off the wall, makes it 4-3, and they score another run in the inning. And they end up scoring 3 runs in the top of the 9th inning. And the Rays go on to beat the Red Sox 7-4 after holding a lead. The Red Sox had a 5-run lead on the Blue Jays on Sunday, 3-run lead last night, and it's completely blown away. And I just think it's so crazy that, the Red Sox did nothing at the trade deadline. I talked about this on Monday, acquiring Kyle Schwarber, and he hasn't played. The Mets, they did do something. They went and got El Mago, but they've teetered, and their pitching hasn't been that great. Taijuan Walker, Marcus Stroman have taken steps back. No Jacob deGrom, no Noah Syndergaard. So it's been a bit of a mess for the Mets. And for these two teams that look like locks to be playoff bound, it is not right now. The Red Sox have been jumped by the Oakland Athletics. They are now second in the wild card race. And they only hold a 2-game lead over the Yankees and a 2.5-game lead over the Toronto Blue Jays, who split a doubleheader yesterday with the Los Angeles Angels. So you got Boston at 65-50, New York 62-51, Toronto at 61-51. So it's a dead heat. Seattle's kind of fallen out of it. They're 5.5 back at 59-55. But for Boston, it's now dire straits. You got 2 more games against the Rays, and you need to win them both. And look at the Mets. They got the Nationals in this series. The Nationals offloaded everybody. And last night, they couldn't finish the game against the Nats, which I think they're going to finish today, or they might have ruled that a win for the Nats. But it's a disaster there. You need to find ways to win. And just looking at the Red Sox, the Yankees are in Kansas City this afternoon. They get a 5-2 lead in the top of the sixth. It's slipping away. The season that looked fantastic, that was really hard to imagine, is slowly becoming a disaster because of really just inconsistent play. And once that negative slide started, they haven't been able to get it back on the wheels here. And those two divisions are intriguing, and the wild card races is intriguing the American League for sure, because Oakland has stayed pretty consistent through this. They're only 2 games back of the Houston Astros, who are playing this afternoon as well. They have a 2-1 lead over Colorado at Minute Maid Park. So they're hanging on by a thread to remain first in that division. So that's going to be a race down the stretch. You got the Braves, who are playing Cincinnati in a series this week, where Cincinnati's still kind of sort of in the wild card race. So that, remains intriguing. But the Braves, again, only sit a game back of the Philadelphia Phillies. New York is now 2 games out. But Atlanta, despite the injuries, despite, really some tough luck, they remain a team that fights. You see Freddie Freeman, he's caught fire. Ozzie Albies has really helped this team. Pitching, Max Fried's gotten better. Bryce Wilson's gotten better over the year. Ian, forget his last name, but he's gotten better throughout the year as well. So it's constant. You see teams that battle. Tampa Bay shouldn't be as good as they are, but they just have guys that show up in the big moments. This season, G-Man Choi, he's not a household name. First baseman / DH. In pinch hit scenarios, he is 6 for 7 with 8 runs batted in this season with 4 doubles. That's called clutch hitting. He comes in the 7th. It changed the game. His hit changed the game, changed the momentum, and you get the Rays into a 9th inning, a game tied. I like their chances of winning it. And I don't like the chances of the Red Sox winning a game like that right now, because they lose those games. We saw it where they had against the Blue Jays, where you're in the bottom of the 8th. Reese McGuire is a really good at bat. He takes a walk. Springer gets to the plate. Before you know it, the ball's over the wall. The game's basically over. So it's just called riding momentum right now. And you got the Blue Jays are 2.5 back. They're in Los Angeles for 2 more games this week. And the story's kind of pivoted. It's not, I think if both teams had really superstar players weren't going to make the playoffs, it would be Ohtani versus Vladimir Guerrero Jr., where I think one of those 2 men will win the MVP award in the American League. And it will be interesting tomorrow, because you'll see, I think Ohtani is taking the mound tomorrow. It'll be Ohtani versus Jose Barrios. Barrios 8-5 with 3.23 ERA. Ohtani 6-11 with a 2.93. But I do think it'll help Ohtani's case if he pitches tomorrow and he really dominates. If he could strike out Vladdy a few times, if he doesn't let him hit one over the wall, if he has a good game against him, I do think that could help contribute to his narrative about winning MVP. I still think he's the favorite right now, despite the Blue Jays making a push towards the playoffs. So I just think baseball, this is the time of year it gets interesting. Again, there are other sports, as the Rodgers Cup, NFL is coming back, some signings in the NHL, the CFL is going, but baseball can have a really good push here, and they can have a last good couple months if these races can stay very intriguing. If Houston and Oakland stay close, if the Blue Jays can play well, if the Yankees, whatever the Yankees are playing well with the Red Sox right in the mix, that's intriguing. So seeing the Red Sox Rays this week, that's a great series to have right now. Dodgers and Phillies will be on TSN tonight. David Price against Kyle Gibson. Gibson's been a really good starter all year, but how does that play out? The Mets, trade for Baez, you traded for Francisco Lindor, you've made some big moves, you spend a lot of money. If you don't make the playoffs, that owner is going to collapse. So again, that would be fun to see. So we'll see what comes of it down the stretch here. But I do think this is really, it's important for baseball. I think it's really good for baseball that we're seeing this, that we're seeing competition, that we're seeing, really intriguing races as I check on tennis scores here just before we wrap today. But I do like where this is headed. And I like the direction that this is going in for baseball, because having the last couple, it's such a long season, 162, you need to have a strong last few months, because this is when people watch. It gets monotonous watching game 50 when you have so much to go. But with 50 games or less to play, people are going to get more invested, including myself, where, watching that Blue Jays game late at night or catching Dodgers Phillies tonight when they get that game on ESPN, that's intriguing. Those are matchups you want to watch. You want to keep your eye on. And also what you're doing is your scoreboard watching. How do the Mets do? Do the Yankees win this afternoon? So that puts pressure on the Blue Jays to win today. The Red Sox look at it and say, oh shit, the Yankees won. They're a game and a half back if you lose tonight. So all of this makes it super intriguing. And, hopefully it makes for a great last push for this season. I want to get to Neil Pionk's contract in Winnipeg today and just the overall defenseman market. I'll say that, try to get to that tomorrow. Talk about some rookie max extensions in the NBA with Trae Young and Luka Doncic. But I'll be back tomorrow, be back Friday with the roundtable where Cole McDonald, Rankin Campbell, and hopefully Seamus Fillmore will be on as well, where we'll talk about the Atlantic Division in the NHL. So we'll talk about Pionk's deal on Friday if I can't get to it tomorrow. So as always, thank you guys for listening. Appreciate the support. Enjoy the nice weather while it's here. But if you're outside reading or going for a dip or whatever you're doing outside in the nice weather, take To the Point with you. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We're everywhere. And appreciate the support, and leave us any comments on anything that I've said today that you think is just completely out of touch. So take care. Have a great day, everybody. And we'll talk soon.